Yep.
Hello and welcome to Mana Biscuit, episode number 35, your weekly controversial geek culture podcast.
Ooh.
That's right. Well, it's going to be controversial this week, but we'll get to that in a minute. I am RJ Volosky. With me, as always, my co-host Jacob Gamble, TJ Rathburn. How you fellas doing? You ready to do this show?
Oh yeah.
Doing
Oh
well,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah, let's get this over with. All right.
You're just gonna launch into it, aren't you?
No, well, I mean, what else did you guys do this
Yeah,
week?
what did we do this week?
Yeah, well, we know what Jay did. We're going to get to that in a minute. I played a little bit more Fallout 4. I had a bunch of other stuff going on that's not really that interesting to talk about. So, other than Fallout 4, yeah, not a whole lot of fun stuff. And let's see, we were just talking in pre-show. TJ's like combing the desert to figure out what he did this week.
Yeah.
And he, yeah. Anyway.
Man.
But Jay, you finished the entire series of Jessica Jones, did you?
In 2 sittings, yes.
In 2 sittings, same as I did. First of all, congratulations for working your way
caught
back
up this time.
Yeah. Now, last week we got a little upset that you would dare to impugn the pristine name of the golden child of Netflix, the show Daredevil. And you're going to take it one step further this week. And you're not alone on this. I will say before we get into it, you're not alone on this. I've seen other people make the same argument. But they were just as wrong as you are. So go ahead.
It's not even really an argument. It's just a baseless statement.
No, it is not a
All right. Enough preamble. Jay, go on record right now.
I am going on record right now and saying Jessica Jones is a better show than Daredevil is.
Okay. So
as far as season 1
all right. Hopefully you remembered the reasoning that you said you forgot earlier, because I'm putting you on the big screen now. Defend yourself, sir. Defend yourself.
Oh, okay. Let's start with the fact that it's not an origin story. All right, you pick up halfway through. She's already played the role. She's already made the attempt to play the role at hero. She has already been, manipulated and used, and this is the after effect. And that's one of the things that it's one of the things that that no other series has taken on. Well, that's not true, because the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. did the after effects for Civil War, but we see Winter Soldier. Pardon me.
Yeah.
Oh wow, I said Civil War because the Civil War trailer dropped, which
is interesting. But let's not get sidetracked.
Yeah.
What are your other points?
It's a better story in general. There's more to it than just simply the meeting up with the antagonist. I also enjoyed the fact that there are more heroes in it than what Daredevil had. Ultimately, I thought maybe we were going to see Daredevil at the final episode.
I was a little geeked for that too, just because I love Daredevil
I was
so
like,
much.
are we going to see him?
I'm like, I want
that tease. Like, I've got this friend. I can call him in.
Yeah.
No. Don't do that.
I'm like, yes, do that.
Yeah, and I thought for sure we were gonna see him, but
just a cameo.
I was actually kind of geeked for that one. But no, we got Luke Cage in there.
Let's summarize. Not an
Patsy
origin
Walker.
story.
We've got
let's
got
summarize
more
before we get
characters in there.
Because I want to do this. I want to give you your fair shake. So let's summarize what you got so far. Not an origin story. More of an actual story. More heroes. Anything else that you wanted to add to the list?
It was more fun than Daredevil as well for me,
Okay.
anyway.
All right.
Uh,
Okay. Let's take a break.
TJ.
Let's take a break before we break TJ. I'm keeping myself under control. Somebody has to.
Yeah.
TJ, I'm going to ask you to do something. No, I don't attack Jay directly, even though I know that's your instinct right now. It's certainly mine. Uh, how about
Oh,
how about you just go
he's
give
wiping
us
his
give
eyes.
us collect yourself if you could. Be a professional. This is hard. This is hard. Tell us why Daredevil is better than Jessica Jones.
Okay. This is. I'm not going to say it's like leaps and bounds better.
No,
I did
I wouldn't
enjoy
say
it
that.
better.
Yeah.
Jessica Jones is still like a fantastic series, and it does do some really good things. But my positive marks for it were things that you didn't really touch on a whole lot. I think though that the things that Daredevil did better was establishing a sense of a world. Uh, Even though like Jessica Jones had Luke Cage, which seems like it should really dramatically open up the universe of this story. It didn't feel like it. It felt very self-contained and almost constrained and quiet. Like there's so much stuff where it seems like there should have been more width to it that it didn't have. I think that I mean, even with the concepts of like Patsy Walker and her storyline, and having like reaching out to the entirety of the city, if not the country. It never felt like it didn't feel as much like it was in the public eye as Daredevil did with Wilson Fisk, which seems entirely backwards. Wilson Fisk should be the guy that's like kind of known in the city, but not known everywhere else, and it just seems so backwards and strange to me. I can't refute your point on more heroes. Because that's just math, man. You can count heroes, and that's well done, Jay. You did good. But I think that
Hey.
what Jessica Jones did very well was that it explored some deeper and more personal themes and did it in a very very extraordinarily good way.
Sure.
And that Daredevil didn't do that as much. But when you say that Jessica Jones was more fun, that just seems
I had
like
more fun with that than I did.
it seems so like opposed to what it felt like they were actually aiming for.
And
That
that was
series was not fun for me. That series was good and enlightening and like a great
Yeah.
experience, but it wasn't
It
fun.
was challenging in some
Yeah.
ways in terms of
when
how it
she
made you
had
feel.
those moments, when she had those moments where she let down her guard, when she was with the people that, when she was with those people that she cared about, and had those moments of, just the quips and the general jokes, you got to see the human aspect of this
Well, you
character.
saw how
that
she
And I mean,
dealt with
ultimately-
her trauma with,
like
sarcasm and
like an
detachment.
acerbic
Yeah.
sense of humor.
Yeah.
And I think, man, Kristen Ritter was such a good choice
Yeah.
because
she really
she's a
was.
very funny woman. She's really. I did not expect her to be nearly as good in this role as she was, and I expected her to be pretty good at it.
Yeah.
But I appreciated when they let that comedic timing come through because she's very good at that. That's traditionally what she's been known for.
Sure.
is comedy. Well, I mean, Breaking Bad wasn't so.
It was.
See, I never watched
yeah.
Breaking Bad.
Oh,
I
okay. Well, there
I've
there
never
were
watched
some
Breaking Bad.
moments
However,
there.
she was in.
Yeah,
She
anyway.
was Don't Trust the
The
Bee
Bee,
in
yep.
Apartment
Yeah,
23.
Yeah.
And that show honestly was a train wreck. And
I saw
the
like
only
2
thing
episodes of it, and I was like, all right.
I watched the majority of it, and honestly, the only thing that I really enjoyed out of that show, and part of the reason that I wasn't sure about Kristen getting cast for it, was because James Vanderbeek carried that second
James
season.
Vanderbeek, man.
It was so him playing himself as it was just phenomenal, and made that show as far as the second season goes, and then it subsequently got canceled because on like it, yeah, nobody
So
watched it but me.
pretty much. I never seen a single episode actually. Uh, but yeah, Kristen Ritter was a good choice. I think the takeaway is that these are two phenomenal series. It's an excellent representation of what can be done with the MCU, given a little bit more breathing room. Not just in the Agents of Shield sense, because Agents of Shield, right? That's very four color. It's it's fun. I enjoy it. I watch it, and I'm going to be depressed when I have to go on mid-season break here in a couple of weeks because I'm really getting into this season. But it's not the same thing. I mean, obviously, Jessica Jones was or Alias was the inaugural line in the Marvel Max series, which is basically Vertigo for Marvel. But you also had Daredevil, who a lot of his more definitive work was done by Frank Miller, who is more of the darker, mature, does a lot of the more dark, mature stories. We'll just leave it at that because we've gone on before about Frank Miller. But anyway, yeah. So, but he does do with a lot of the more dark, mature stuff. So you have this theme, this theme that can really sort of be explored. It can breathe a little bit in something like Netflix, which has become, I'd say, it's like, I really love Homeland. Don't get me wrong. But as far as prestige TV distributors go right now, my ranking is HBO and then Netflix. And yeah, Homeland is really good, but I wouldn't put Showtime above Netflix right now for prestige TV by any stretch.
No.
And getting the MCU in that game, it's just a masterstroke. It really is.
Yeah, and I'm a Penny Dreadful fan as well.
Yeah, Penny Dreadful was good.
Show.
Yeah,
Penny
it was
Dreadful's
okay.
not bad.
I haven't watched it at all. I got my hands on a copy for somebody else who wanted me to grab it for them, and I'm like, yeah, sure, we'll watch that, and then never did. So I should probably do that.
Yeah, it was enjoyable. It was enjoyable. But anyway, so that's like 3 weeks straight now talking Jessica Jones. We'll probably talk a little bit more next week.
Well, I mean, it's just been so miraculous having all of us caught up on a show like this.
Yeah.
So
I mean, we haven't really retread much on it either. So, we got first impressions, we got impressions of the full series, and then Jay's got to come in here and be an antagonizer, and
that's
and
right.
we got some good discussion on that too. So, all right, what else do we want to talk about? See you next week, guys. No, we got to do a little bit of a discussion here on no particular order.
Yep.
And the reason I wanted to bring it over to Man Biscuit because it triggered a thought in my head while we were having the discussion that I thought would probably be something we could ramble about and might be interesting for you guys to chip in with in the comments, or maybe listen to us and rage about how off base we are. But specifically, that thought was how great villains in a video game sense are sometimes more defined by mechanics than a traditional narrative sense. And I thought that on our list there are some games where the villain is great because of the mechanics and because the mechanics are used in the mechanics as narrative sense. That sort of more art house, if you will, approach to game theory and game design. I think GLaDOS would be on that list because GLaDOS, a lot of her is a lot of her is integrated into the mechanics of the game in terms of the way rooms are changed, the way the companion cube plays the role it does. A lot of that doesn't. Those are all mechanical things, but they don't play without GLaDOS.
They do. It is a mechanical thing in the sense that it is, stuff that is happening in the game. GLaDOS, it doesn't feel to me like a mechanics villain, though. Because mechanics villains are just villains. I'm trying to do this without being all, like, tautological.
Right.
Do you know the first rule of Tautology Club? It's the first rule of Tautology Club.
Yes.
uh, but mechanics villains are remembered because of the mechanics of actually dealing with them. Dealing with GLaDOS wasn't really challenging. The mechanics weren't really put in any particular high display or put through any particularly heavy paces. It was just a kind of straightforward thing. She is very much a narrative villain, even though like she's behind kind of the mechanics of the game in a story way. Nothing about her requires a particular mastery of the mechanics to defeat her.
Right. Well, yeah, and that's a. I think. Okay. So yeah, let me back out of Tautology Club here, and let me just say, I think that when you're talking about mechanics, it's not necessarily in terms of, and maybe it is in this context, but I think in general, it's not in terms of something that needs to be mastered. It's that's an important part of it, but I think when you're talking about mechanics as narrative, and particularly with a villain, I think that you're talking about mechanics that evoke a narrative sense of some sort. And so I think when you have something like the companion cube, which is, mechanically, it's a block in a block puzzle. But what GLaDOS does as a narrative villain, she takes that mechanic and gives it more than just the simple mechanic that you've done, thousands of times since block puzzles became a thing in 3D games. And in that sense, I would still say that she is in a mechanics as narrative villain. She's probably not the best example coming out. The problem with doing this stuff off the top of your head is you're not gonna always have the best examples.
I mean, you had the best. Honestly, you had the best. We had the best example with TJ's list with Mantis. Mantis was
that's
a
a mechanics
villain.
Although there's also the element there where it's breaking the fourth wall. So I mean, and there's nothing wrong with that in general, but it's
the first person off of our list that honestly I thought of as a mechanics villain, even though it feels simple from our perspective now, was Dr. Robotnik.
Yeah.
Everything that was put forth for those boss fights with Robotnik was all about further mastery of the mechanics of the game. Finding new ways to exploit a very small set of ways that your character can interact with that environment and how to make them new and interesting and dangerous. And that's how a mechanical villain should play.
Sure. But what I'm looking for, in my thought on this, and as I sort of mold these concepts over, what I'm looking for is a villain. And maybe Dr. Robotnik fits this bill, but I'm looking for a villain that's not only a mechanical villain, but where the mechanics feed the narrative of the villain as well. And maybe Robotnik does fit that bill because part of the, it's a cartoonish conceit for the narrative,
right.
But he's the mad scientist always looking for the bigger, better, stronger machine to Wile E. Coyote against the protagonist,
Right.
And that
Plus,
does play out in the mechanics.
That we fight,
right?
Like every villain that we fight is you bop it and the little bunny or whatever comes out,
right?
Like the kidnapping of all of the different creatures and making them into the villains. Yep. Even the construction of a lot of the levels, it's all the mechanics are tied in a, like you said, a very kind of cartoonish way back to Robotnik.
Yeah. So. I don't know. This is something that we're kind of doing off the cuff here, but it's a fairly deep topic, so it might be something that if you guys have any thoughts on or have thought about before, and you're like ripping your hair out now because we're brutalizing this subject that you've always wanted to talk about, let us know. We can take it.
One thing that I found telling, not necessarily interesting, because I could totally predict it, but the vast majority of the villains that we picked for our lists were all narrative villains.
Mm-hmm.
We all picked, for the most part, there were a couple of things in each list that you could say were like mechanical villains, or like there's different types of villains for video games, but most of them were all very narrative focused because we tend to be people who are focused on stories in video games.
And I think that was if I'm being perfectly honest with you and transparent and letting you see the mana sausage get made. That we probably could have done better. We probably could have done better with that topic for a top 5 list, because I think that I think that we're seeing that now. So maybe we'll revisit it in a future, no particular order, or maybe we won't. I don't know. But I did want to talk about it here because I think it's an interesting discussion.
Right. But to touch back on something that I was saying in no particular order, the thing that sparked this was the concept that while we picked a lot of villains because they were the things that resonated with us on a story level, there are also lots of things that didn't spring to mind to me as villains, but as bosses.
Right.
As mechanical things that you have to pass to get to a various stage, especially because of my love for Souls games.
Yeah.
And they are very much like set around mechanics based fighting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so some of my favorite experiences in terms of villainry in games recently has been characters that were pretty much unimportant in the grand scheme of the storyline, but were so difficult or so fun or novel in the way that you had to fight them. But they don't spring to mind for me when you talk about great video game villains. They're just puzzles. They're just mechanics.
Right. Yeah. Well, and there's something to be said there too for the Souls games in the way that they do use the mechanics of the game to invite you to explore the world, and in exploring the world, that's how the story unfolds. There are very few cutscenes, very few dialogue interactions compared to what you would normally see in an RPG of that scope. But yeah, all right.
The one thing that bothered me with this list actually was the fact that we shared so many just simply based on the fact that a lot of these villains just they're not fleshed out in video games like they are with let's take you disagree?
No, I think you entirely. Yeah. I agree entirely, but I think I might know why.
Okay, go ahead, because I'm curious. I was looking for an answer as we were talking about it. Somebody, I don't remember if it was you or if it was Dave, if it was RJ that started to touch on it, and then we shifted gears, but in MPO. But the fact that they're just they're obscure and they're not fleshed out like they really should be for.
Oh, I think that's part of the maturity of the medium. I think that's a part of the maturity of the medium in general, but TJ has something to say on it as well. So,
and of course, everybody should always take what I say with a grain of salt, even though I'm always right and I'm brilliant and fantastic, and like literally brilliant. As the light effect comes up, I don't know what's happening.
You have been illuminated, sir.
So, I did have a great idea, and a bulb did go off. I think that it's part of the medium itself. I think that it's because with other forms of media, and the first ones that spring to mind for me are novels and are movies, and I guess comics and like all sorts of things.
Yeah.
But in other media, you are allowed to take focus to wherever it needs to be to flesh out the characters. You can have the cutaway to seeing what the villains are doing. You can have flashbacks. You can have chapters that are set from their perspective. You can take the focus off of the main protagonist and move it to the villain for a while if that's what you need to do, set up your story. But with video games in particular, because you are in control, you want your player as much time as is possible to be actively doing things, unless you're Kojima and then you just want them to watch like 9-hour cutscenes about Metal Gears. But for the most part, you want your player to be actively controlling stuff as it's happening, and it's difficult to switch over and do like those brief asides without upsetting the pacing of a game, because either you have to do the thing where you're briefly controlling the villain, which can be very effective, the first one that pops into my head was Star Wars. When you play as Darth Vader in Force Unleashed in that first level, like that was really well done. But for the most part, if you get switched to the villain, either it's going to not work mechanically or it's not going to fit the pacing of the story. Like, it's very difficult for video games to be able to take that time to flesh out a villain,
Yeah.
because you're supposed to be in the driver's seat of the hero as much as possible. That's
Right.
the way the medium works.
Yeah, and that was yeah, Spec Ops is still recent enough that I don't want to spoil it, but that was part of the brilliance of Spec Ops 2 is the way that they were able to flesh out the villain without having you control anyone else or shift the narrative focus. Yeah, even that might be too much said, but anyway, yeah, I think it's
Speaking of
that
villains,
is
I forgot this needs to be brought up.
okay. Go ahead. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Dude. You finish what you're saying because
No.
this is a completely different topic.
Okay.
I think we can shift focus if
Yeah,
that's
I mean, basically, what I was gonna say is that I think that's one part of it. You know, that's a lot said on, you know, one aspect of the medium, but I think that it's still boils down to the maturity of the medium, because you will see mechanics being used in ways that can drive narrative further in gameplay. As game developers iterate generation after generation and become greater masters of the medium. But anyway, Jay, what did you want to shift here?
Oh, shifting gears to the video game awards here. Actually, this was a month ago now. Wow. But I had just
The
read about
VGAs
this the other
were.
day.
I don't think they were a month ago, but
Is it? Actually, I
Yeah.
don't think it was 4 days. It was a week ago. Sorry.
yeah, okay.
I completely just misread the date on that whole thing.
Okay.
But Konami kept Kojima from attending the awards and
Yeah.
accepting the reward for Metal Gear, and ultimately the host slammed them for it. One of those things that this saga, this soap opera needs to be over with.
Yeah, I mean, well, it is for me.
Honestly,
Everybody
at this
hates
point,
Konami.
tired of,
Well,
yeah,
what's
and
really interesting
it's
is
becoming worse.
I started looking into this a couple of days ago because of the stuff that was going around because of the video game awards, and pretty much what I've found was everybody's like, yeah, Konami are jerks, but Kojima is also just like horrifically difficult to work with. So you take
Yeah.
two sets of like jerkness that don't get along, and it's just going to be bad all around. You can't entirely blame Konami for this because Kojima was not a good
Well,
dude to work with.
yeah, I mean, it's not. Well, it is.
You
It
can
is
blame
for
him for
you.
a lot of other stuff. But,
Yeah, it is. It is for you guys because you're really looking forward to Silent Hills.
Yeah.
But for me, there's not a
Yes.
lot of emotional investment either way. And I mean, Konami wants to be a pachinko and slot machine maker now, and that makes them irrelevant to me. And
This is true.
Kojima, yeah, it doesn't surprise me at all that he's difficult to work with. Most, you know, visionary auteurs are. And that's not to excuse their behavior. That's just the fact of the way that type of mindset exists. It's not a very personable mindset typically. You know, Steve Jobs, you know,
Kubrick.
yeah, was the next one coming to mind. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, it's
but,
not surprising.
I don't know. It bothers me because it's gotten to the point now where like I see where it's the big guy pushing around the little guy. I
Well,
mean, they've already took his name.
yeah.
Well,
But-
They
which
took
one's
his
the big
name
guy?
off of-
yeah, there's no argument to be made that Kojima's a little guy. I mean, Kojima's
Yeah.
Kojima's going to be eating lunch for the rest of his life on the Metal Gear series, and That's all there is to it. But
That's true.
He'll go off and do something else, and
yeah,
like, okay, hopefully either he'll do one of two things: either he'll come up with a new intellectual property and give us some like really awesome games, or he'll just start making damn movies because that's what he wants to do anyway. Just stop making me watch all these cutscenes.
Or yeah, stop making me run around in between your movies. Although hopefully you get someone else to write the stories because
oh man.
Anyway,
I mean, Del Toro was supposed to write Silent Hill.
Yeah, I know. That's why.
I know.
Yeah, and
he was real sad about it too. I remember his tweets. He was very sad. He was broken up.
But no, it's gotten to the point now where it's starting to tarnish the Konami code for me, which is the ultimate of happiness as far as everybody knows it. It's actually you'd be surprised how few people actually know it.
Because we're old.
Yeah, I know, and I actually had a rant on.
Well, to me, seeing kids wearing the Konami code T-shirt now, I'm sure is the same response that my parents had to seeing, or my parents' generation, because probably not my parents specifically, but anyway, my parents' generation had to seeing like 13-year-old kids wearing Led Zeppelin T-shirts in the 90s. Yep. That's just one of those things where it's just like you're appropriating something from my generation, and I will not have it. Get off my lawn.
As you throw cats at them.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
Anyway. So before we get off these people's lawns, we did get some good comments on no particular order last week. I believe TJ has them prepared with people proffering their list for top 5 video game protagonists.
Yes. So we're going to start with the stuff that was on the Facebook page. First comes from a friend of the show, Steve. His list is as follows. Chrono from Chrono Trigger. I want to do the explanations that everybody put on, but so many people actually gave us feedback that I don't know we'll have time. So I'm just going to do the actual characters. So number 2, Cloud from Final Fantasy. Lara Croft from Tomb Raider. Aya Bray from Parasite Eve. And Duke Nukem from Duke Nukem.
Yeah.
A very solid list.
Yeah, I really like the inclusion of Aya Bray there. That's she's underrated in my opinion, because that is a phenomenal game from Squaresoft from the 90s, and we need another game to take the taste of what is it? Second Breakfast? No, Third Birthday, I think. Yeah, Third Birthday, I think is what it's called. Anyway, the awful PSP game, but yeah, Parasite Eve 1 and 2, phenomenal games. Highly underrated from the PS1 era. All right, next list.
All right, Dave said his 5 are Gordon Freeman from Half-Life. Yes, very much so. Yes. Link from The Legend of Zelda. There were a bunch of comments about why nobody picked Link, and it's because we're baiting you again.
For the same reason we didn't pick Cloud or Titus or
Yeah.
Nobody would pick Titus.
I know, seriously.
Third on Dave's list is Fei Fong Wong from Xenogears. Next, The Kid from Bastion. And finally, Jack from Bioshock.
Game.
Bastion?
Oh, yeah, it's a phenomenal game.
I listen to the soundtrack when I'm at work just all the time. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Bree threw on mostly just like support for the characters that we've already picked, and also threw in Alice from American McGee's Alice.
Yes. Yeah.
And then
really, really cool games.
Yep.
And then we got an honorable mention, also from Steve, Earthworm Jim.
Yeah.
Which I thought about too when I was thinking about my list. I'm like, oh man, I love Earthworm Jim.
Yeah.
It just doesn't really. It didn't end up making the cut.
Yeah, that was a great topic for top 5 lists. Thank you very much for contributing your list, guys. We really appreciate it. It's been fun to talk about. And all right, we also had a comment about somebody wanting to replace Jay, but I think after this week, we'll go and keep him around. It's been working out.
Well, thank you.
I mean, if we have to.
All right. Well, that's about it for this week, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Once again, do the things like subscribe, tell a friend, If you didn't like the show, tell an enemy. And
You have to watch this. This is the greatest. What am I watching?
That's right. Yeah, we'll get out of here. So for Jacob Gamble, for TJ Rathburn, I am RJ Velosky, and we will see you guys next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.